Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. Recording this on a Tuesday, episode 998. Countdown to 1,000 is fastly, of course, approaching. Just a couple weeks away, we'll have our 1,000th episode. Certainly looking forward to that. Um, we will a lot to get to on this podcast. We're going to begin with a look at the NCAA tournament. And first, before you even get to that, like, subscribe, share this podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated. As we approach 1,000 episodes, you can find this podcast where all podcasts are available. So, looking at the Sweet 16 right now, as the NCAA will reconvene on Thursday. And listen, you have a dominant performance between the SEC and Big Ten conferences. 11 out of the 16 teams came from those two conferences. They continue their dominance. So in terms of college sports in this tournament, the SEC has 7 and has been in complete control of this tournament. The Big Ten got off to a fast start, going 9-0. And you have a number of matchups that feature top seeds. It's really been, for the most part, a chalk tournament. The biggest upset came, if you want to call it upset in terms of seeding, in terms of seeding, is St. John's being knocked out by Arkansas. And anybody watch that game know that was not a big time upset, considering that Arkansas. You put Arkansas in a lot of conferences, they are probably one amongst the 2 or 3 best teams in the conference in any other conference other than the SEC. They have a lot of talent. I could make a case they probably have as much as not more talent than St. John's. Calipari has owned Patino lately in the NCAA tournament, so that was not a big upset. I didn't have it, but it was not a big upset in hindsight. I want to say this has been a underwhelming NCAA tournament. There have been no compelling storylines. I was looking back at the last 10 years of NCAA tournaments. This is by far, and I mean, it's not even close, by far, the least most compelling NCAA tournament that I can remember. I went back there. You go back to 2016. You had Villanova, North Carolina. North Carolina, loses on a buzzer beater. They come back 2017 with a redemption title. Then, you have a string, Virginia 19 redeeming themselves after losing their first round. Baylor getting the championship a couple of years, beating an undefeated Gonzaga team, a unlikely North Carolina run in 2022, losing a classic game to Kansas in the final. And then, last 2 years, you have the mini UConn dynasty, going back to back. This year is like, right now, it's, the pickings are slim as far as storylines. Now, there's still some hope. Because you have a lot of star power as far as the best teams are still alive for the most part. I don't think St. John's was considered like, and I pick St. John's. I understand being trying to be different, but in terms of the teams that can win a national championship, I think you have the main contenders with Auburn, Duke, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, who are still in it. Cooper Flag, John Braun, two of the major candidates for player of the years are still in it. So there's still potential for something great to come out this tournament, but they're going to, the NCAA tournament is going to need a lot of help. You need probably a Duke, Tennessee, a Duke, Tennessee / U, the Kentucky Final Four, Auburn, Florida. You need a SEC, and you need basically SEC versus Duke to save this tournament. Because so far it has been borderline boring, to be perfectly honest with you. I know we got the buzzer beater in Maryland, and that's been been a nice story, especially if you live in a DMV route for Maryland. And considering Maryland hadn't been in the Sweet 16 in a few years, But I'm telling you right now, this is the first year that I felt that, you know, transfer portal, NIL really has had a major impact on hurting this tournament. It's just hard to identify or have any connections with these teams unless you are a fan of Duke or a fan of Auburn, or a fan of a team remaining, unless you are just the highest level of diehard college basketball fan. It's been difficult to be perfectly honest with you. And I'll say this: I love basketball in general, but the gap between the NBA and college basketball in my life has never been bigger as far as which one has my interest. It's not even remotely close. There was a time where it was basically 50-50 between college basketball and NBA. I was just as much into college basketball as I was the NBA, if not a little bit slightly more so even college basketball. That time did exist, not too long ago. I would say about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But that gap right now, it is, the NBA on a bad night, you could get two or three great games in the NBA versus, versus college versus where college basketball is right now. Right now, I mean, the NBA playoffs are going to be ridiculous. How great the NBA playoffs! Like, we'll get into it in terms of what the playing matchup right now, but like, you know, it's that gap has just skyrocketed. But there's still hope for the NCAA for this NCAA tournament. Again, there are a lot of top seeds um, that are still in play. Again, you have a number of big names that are still in play. So hopefully you get something, you get something you get something to cheer about, or you get a story that can kind of grab you and captivate the sports nation and leading up into the Masters that weekend of the national championship and into the Masters. But I'm gonna tell you right now, the NCAA tournament is on life support as far as the interest. I mean, this to be perfectly honest with you, it has not been good. George Foreman passes away this weekend at the age of 76. Simply one of the greatest heavyweight champions, one of the greatest heavyweight boxers of all time. 76-5. Uh, he, he has three fights. There were three fights that to me defined his career, and all three of those fights, he was at a different stage of his career. You go Frazier when he upsets Joe Frazier, and just when I mean beats the absolute dog shit out of it, man. I actually went back and watched that fight. It was only the fight was only a couple rounds, so it was a very short fight, and he beat Frazier. He knocked Frazier down 6 times in that fight. And again, that is one of in terms of high profile fights, it's one of the worst beatings I've ever seen another champion take in any weight class, easily. And Joe Frazier is an all time great, and he made mincemeat out of Joe Frazier in that fight. So you had that, you have the Ali fight where he's taking on an aging Ali. Ali wasn't completely cooked, obviously, because he would go on to regain the title a third time, even after that. But this was at a stage where Ali looked to be, the most vulnerable that he had been in his career. He wasn't as fast as he once was. People thought he was crazy for fighting Foreman. Foreman was in peak condition at that time. I think Foreman was only like 25. Ali was about 32. And, went back and watched that fight. First of all, you go back and watch these fights and your perception of them changes over the years if you get a chance to see them now versus when you might have saw the film on it or saw them on YouTube way back in the day. It was Ali won the fight, even minus the knockout. Like that was the thing that stuck out about that fight. Ali won that fight, even I thought he was winning that fight, and again he took a pounding, but he really um it wasn't as bad, as one sided as I thought it was growing up, considering the rope a dope strategy that he did, the mind games that he played with George Foreman. He had Foreman wore himself out, punched himself out. He really got Foreman's head. I mean, that was a psychological masterpiece by Ali. If you ever go watch that fight, he was talking to Foreman. He just had a strategy that took a pounding in that fight, but it was really up until the knockout, the eighth round knockout, which was in the eighth round. Um, Pretty much almost an even fight, to be perfectly honest with you. Like Ali fought a tremendous fight, and then Foreman, of course, redeems himself. Um, you remember he retired, so he retires at 28. He goes a decade out, out of boxing, becomes an ordained minister, kind of reinvents himself, physically gains weight, comes back bald head, and he dominates. With a couple of a few tomato cans, but gets a title shot in 1994 against Michael Moore, who at the time was a up and coming, just a highly talented boxer who probably should have been. I mean, it's hard to say. Moore was an excellent fighter, but a lot of people thought Moore could have been better. It's hard to knock a guy when he becomes heavyweight championship champion of the world. I'll say that. But one of the most stunning upsets in the history of the sport, and one of the great sports moments, I think, of the 20th, one of the most underappreciated sports moments I think, of the past 40 years. Um, well, the past 30 years. The 30th anniversary of it, just passed. It was in November of 94. 94. I remember the fight like it was yesterday. Watched it on HBO. When it first happened, I didn't think much of it as far as like, yeah, Michael Moore probably is going, lay is probably going to beat the daylights out George Foreman. Has no chance of winning this fight. Like I didn't think much. I was into boxing as a teenager, and especially during that time. That was a that was a underrated era. You had the Holyfield, uh, Lennox Lewis, Holyfield, Riddick Bowe, that era. Russell Douglas was cooked by then. Tyson was, wasn't what he once was, but still somewhat formidable. So that was a underrated era that had some high quality talent. Michael Moore comes up, and for the better part of 9 rounds, Michael Moore is dominating the fight. He's clearly winning the fight. He had thrown like 300 more punches in the fight, and he got caught. Foreman caught him with a 1-2 combo, and it was night night. And I watched the legendary fights, legendary nights on HBO, and I had seen it before. I watched it again, and of course Foreman says, "Hey, I was playing this. You know, this was all in. This was all in my plan." Michael Moore calls, basically says bullshit. You got lucky. Um, And Foreman becomes the oldest heavyweight champion of all time at age 45, which can to put that in perspective is just incredible. In a very good era of boxing. This was not like what would come in the early 2000s when you had like John Ruiz, and even when Roy Jones became heavyweight champion. I mean, boxing hit a stretch in the 2000s, the early 2000s, where it was just the heavyweight division was an absolute joke. This was when the heavyweight division was strong. All these were, Holyfield, Riddick Bowe underachieved, but still became a champion. Was probably didn't get the most out. Really, but still was a top fighter in that era. And of course, you have Bowe. Lewis was all time great. We know what Holyfield did in his career. I mean, these were great. This was an underrated era during that mid to late 90s. And he was a tremendous champion. And George Foreman gets the championship belt back at 45. And again, 76-5. Um, he retires at 48. He never, ever embarrassed himself That's the thing about you look about his career. Some of the greatest fighters of all time, I mean, all time greats, got to a point where they embarrassed themselves because they couldn't fight anymore, or they just was doing it for the money. Muhammad Ali, considered the greatest, titled himself the greatest, and considered probably the greatest heavyweight of all time. Though Joe Louis fans, uh, who are probably not living right now, will dispute that. Some guy, go back to the Jack Johnsons and you can go back to some boxing historians might question Ali being the greatest, but universally, Muhammad Ali is regarded as the greatest heavyweight. He embarrassed himself late in his career with some of the fights. Like that Larry Holmes fight. Go look at that Larry Holmes fight. He had no business in the ring. Larry Holmes beat just toy with. Larry Holmes beat him so bad he cried afterwards because he felt Ali was his idol. He had sparred with Ali. Matter of fact, he sparred with Ali during the when Ali was training for the Foreman fight in Zaire. Um, he embarrassed himself. Roy Jones Jr. embarrassed himself with how many losses he was taking late in his career. I mean, of course, we know what happened with Mike Tyson late in his career. So a number of all-time great fighters who have hung in too long have landed on hard times and have just not been the same fighters. This was not the case with George Foreman. It wasn't the case with Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis is a underrated, underappreciated all-time great. Lennox Lewis is a all-time great. But this was certainly not the case with George Foreman. George Foreman reinvents himself, um, kind of like a bigger, was not the biggest personality. I mean, think about young Foreman versus the elderly Foreman versus older Foreman. The young Foreman was kind of reserved, um, not a malcontent, not somebody that was angry, not somebody that didn't hate like the press, but compared to the personalities like Ali, he kind of kept to himself, but you know, had that night power, and that was that. Older George Foreman, when he comes back, he's like I said, ordained minister. He even said it about, I came back as a salesman, the big personality. He did have a personality. Um, Kind of was liked by people. It was respected by kind of was embraced in his older age by the baby boomer generation. He was rooting for, he was out there rooting for him as a 45-year-old fighting these 20-year-old guys 15, 20 years younger than him. So really a tale of like two careers when it came to George Foreman. And again, he even after his boxing days are over, he becomes a highly successful businessman with the George Foreman grill. Matter of fact, I still have a George Foreman grill, by the way, a George Foreman mini grill that I still use to this day. To be honest with you, it still works. Um, he makes, he sells that for like $137 million. Uh, Makes a ton of money over the course of his career. As a highly successful businessman, and just one of the great careers. Just one of the great boxing careers of all time. You think of him as kind of like this. I think he had 11 kids. Yeah, I think he had 11 kids, and one of his daughters passed away. Passed away, so he really had 12 kids, and named all his sons George. I think it was six of them altogether. So just a legendary figure in the boxing ring and outside the boxing ring, and a guy who again had one of the you go back and watch that Moore fight. Just no one saw that coming. Absolutely no one saw him beating Michael Moore. And Michael Moore wasn't an all-time great fighter, but I had watched enough boxing up to that point in my short life at that time. You just didn't see old guys. I didn't grow up seeing older guys fight. I didn't see Ali when he was older. I didn't see probably the oldest fighter that I saw up to that point that was really past his prime was Larry Holmes. And, Larry Holmes gets knocked out by Mike Tyson, but that wasn't embarrassing because we all knew, anybody that watched that fight knew Larry Holmes was going to get his ass kicked by Mike Tyson. I think it was I think that was 88. I think that was around 88 or so before when Tyson was still undefeated, before the Buster Douglas upset in 90. So one of just, a guy in George Foreman who, again, really used the boxing, um, didn't allow boxing to dictate or control his life. Knew when to get in, knew when to get out, and knew when to get out. And again, that is a very, very rare quality for a boxer of any weight class, or especially a boxer that has been a world champion and an all-time great. Around the NBA, Cleveland Cavaliers have been are 1-4 in their last 5 games. They have, matter of fact, they trail now the Oklahoma City in the standings if they were to beat the finals. And you look at their struggles. I mean, it's kind of simple. Offensive rating 12, not bad, not terrible. 12 is not terrible. It's not what they have been accustomed to. Defensive rating 22nd. The defense has been awful, but I pinpoint their struggles to this. Donovan Mitchell, um, 20 points on 33% from the field, 16% from the 3 point from three. Since the All Star break, Mitchell, 14 games since the All Star break, is 23 points, 39% from the field, 27% from the 3 point line. Um, Here's the bottom line to me. And I thought I was really thinking about this as well as Cleveland had played. Never been completely sold on them being able to win a championship. Never, I haven't been. Again, I'm not completely down on them, but never been able. So never been sold on them to be to win a championship. And it all made sense when it really came clear when I really thought about this fact. When I look at Donovan Mitchell, Donovan Mitchell is 6'3". So if you take out Steph Curry, right, who is probably one of the top 12 to 15 players of all time, lean towards top 12 players of all time, without question, the second greatest point guard in all time. That conversation is him, Magic, and him. They are alone. Those two are alone in that conversation of greatest point guards. And Steph is just different. Steph is, like I said, we never seen anything like Steph Curry. You take him out. How many teams have been led to have won a championship with a perimeter player under 6'6"? Michael Jordan was 6'6". Kobe Bryant, 6'6". LeBron James, 6'9". Okay, when Kawhi Leonard beat, 6'7". You go across the board. Shea, right? SGA is 6'6". You don't see small guards. It just doesn't happen in the NBA. I mean, Jason Tatum is 6'8", 6'9". Some people say he's even closer to 6'10". We've seen Durant be the best player on. We know Durant's like 7 foot and played on those couple of teams with Golden State. Um, the point is, you just don't see 6'3" guards. It's hard, be hard pressed to see a 6'3" guard lead a team to a championship. There's a reason why that has not happened. Donovan Mitchell, as dynamic as he's been, he deserves. Listen. I think he deserves to be first team All NBA despite these struggles. Their team, right? They're going to win over 60 games, and the numbers don't tell how much he's impacted winning and how much of a leader he's been. I think he does deserve first team All NBA. But the point and some MVP consideration, like he'll be probably top 5 in the MVP voting. But the bottom line is, you don't see like guards that height don't win championships. Like I said, the list is short. You Steph Curry over the past 40 years, Steph Curry and Isaiah Thomas. That's the list. Magic Johnson, 6'9". Larry Bird, 6'8". That is the list. I mean, that you have two guys. Yeah, that's why Isaiah Thomas doesn't get anywhere near the respect that he does deserve. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, you go back uh, when the Sixers won in the 80-83. I mean, Moses was their best player, and Dr. J was 6'8". If you're looking at dominant as a perimeter player, and look at the 2000s, uh, again, it was the perimeter players that were winning were 6'6" and above. Kobe, LeBron. Now I guess so. Dwayne Wade would probably be the nearest. Dwayne Wade was 6'4", so he was Miami's best player. But um, they also had Shaquille O'Neal, who at still at the time was the best big man in the league. Was the best center in the league in 2000. That year in 2006 was the best center in the league. But the way I mean that would be the closest. I mean that outside of Curry and outside of Curry and Isaiah Thomas. I mean, Dwayne Wade would be it was 6'4". That is probably like the last guy outside of those two. And again, he played and Dwayne Wade played bigger than 6'4". He did, but in that remember that championship was in 2006. Completely different game. If you look at it again, the 2010s on, now we're in 2020s. It is again that to me, you can throw a lot of wings at a 6'3" guard. You can throw a lot of wing players at a 6'3" guard. Oklahoma City has a bunch of wings. Boston has a bunch of wings. So that stood out to me with Cleveland struggling the way they're struggling, and also the bottom line is, you know, I think I like Mobley. Mobley as your their second best player is who? What? Who's their second best player? Mobley, Garland. I mean, if Mobley's can you win a championship really with Evan Mobley being your second best player? Again, there's certain teams, folks. Listen, there's certain teams that are just built for the regular season. There are certain teams that just flourish in the regular season. I'm not disrespecting Cleveland. I think I think they're better than say the Hawks were in 2015 or a team like the Raptors. I'm not saying they're much better than those teams, but I just needed people to take a pause. You gotta look at the NBA is a postseason sport. You gotta look at how your team matches up in the postseason. Are they constructed to win in June, in May and June? You really have those who are your top two players? Do you have a top 8 to 10 guy, and do you have a number 2 guy that could be on a given night the best player on the court on a given night when it has who has that ability? And there's still questions about Oklahoma City. I think they're just all around a much better team than Cleveland from top to bottom, and I think that for them to win a championship, I think Oklahoma City is going to the finals. But for them to win a championship, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams are going to have to be spectacular. Like those two guys are going to have to be great for them to win a championship. Speaking of the Western Conference, right now again, the Western Conference looks like Oklahoma City and everybody else. Denver is limping. I mean, they're just trying to get into the playoffs and be healthy. We know defensively they've been a joke. Um, I normally don't like fall into the trap of talking about how dangerous the Clippers are, especially when Kawhi is actually healthy. But I'm going to actually fall into that trap this evening. The Clippers right now 8-2 in their last 10 games, fourth best offensive rating, fourth best defensive rating, second in terms of net rating. They've really been beating pounding teams. Only OKC has a better net rating over the past 10 games. Kawhi Leonard is 24, 7, and 4, 52% on the field, 43 from 3-point range. Listen, I think the Clippers, the reason why I think this year this could be different as far as I don't think the Clippers can win a championship. And I don't think they get to the finals. I do see a scenario right now. They're seventh. I do see a scenario where uh they could, let's say hypothetically speaking, let's say the Clippers finish sixth. Let's say they get past let's say they finish sixth. Okay. And it was a uh Clippers Denver. Denver would beat them. Denver probably. I mean, Denver, that the Jokic has owned the Clippers over the course of his career, more than likely. Um, let's say the Clippers finish seventh and they play Houston. Probably would favor the Clippers in that matchup. Probably favor the Clippers in that matchup. And I think the Clippers don't have a lot of pressure on them. They kind of been under the radar. They have a great coach, a guy who's built for the postseason. We know Kawhi Leonard, if he's on the court, can be lethal in the postseason. Zubac, Zuboff has been just spectacular. He had a 28-20 game against Cleveland last week. So, again, I don't have any faith in the Clippers to even stay healthy in terms of with Kawhi Leonard. We've seen that move before. Um, you gotta see it to believe it in terms of him staying healthy, but and just keep your eye on them as a possible team that could make some noise in the playoffs. Again, I'm not talking title contender or even getting or winning a championship or getting even get to the finals, but they're playing well right now. And right now in the Western Conference, you know, the Lakers and the Grizzlies are leaking oil. Lakers have they both lost three straight. I think. Listen, I think the Grizzlies are going to drop out and end up playing. Right now, we right now the play-in, you had the Clippers in Minnesota. That would be just a spectacular play-in. I think the Grizzlies are going to fall out of the fifth seed and find their way in, possibly the play-in. I really don't like the way Memphis is playing. They don't. They can't stay healthy. Brandon Clark is out for the rest of the year. You've seen John Morant miss games. They have a lot of guys that miss games in and out. They easily could fall out of that spot, that fifth spot. Now again, they have like a 2 game cushion on Golden State. 2 games is a lot at this stage as we near April. But I just don't like the way Memphis is playing. Lakers have lost 3 straight. They were embarrassing in Chicago. That was a 31-point loss. Lost last night to Orlando. We'll see, how they start to coming back down to earth as far as their defense goes. The defense has been bad. LeBron just got back against Chicago, so that could be the case. The defense that the defense is starting to play that defensively, they are starting to look like the team that we thought they would be. Considering some of the defensive players that they gave up. But this wasn't, and again, I know Houston's played well. The West goes through OKC. It really does. I'm sorry. Denver just doesn't do it for me this year. They just don't right now. It's some defensively. I don't think people are afraid of Denver. I know Joker's Joker, but it's something missing with that team this year. Murray's played somewhat better, but I don't think you could just be as bad as they are defensively and all of a sudden turn it on in the playoffs and just say, hey, like we're going to now all of a sudden be this defensive juggernaut. They are right now, Denver's in the bottom half defensively of the league, and I just don't believe that's something that you turn on when the playoffs come. Who won the week? The SEC. Um, Again, the SEC continues to dominate college sports. Uh, with now, you had like now again. I know the Big Ten won the national championship in football, but the SEC, with what they already have in football now, they you have the great regular season in basketball. You get 14 teams in. You get now seven in the Sweet 16. Again, I would be surprised if they're not. If I picked Tennessee and Alabama to get to the Final Four. I would be bored. I'd be shocked if there weren't at least two SEC teams in the Final Four, and would not be surprised if there were three. Um, in terms of recruiting, in terms of where the SEC is at right now, they are in some of the negotiating power they're going to have with the college football with that whole situation. When they expand, it's hard to be in a better spot than the SEC conference is right now, and it seems like it's only going to get stronger as the years go on. But the SEC basketball, I mean, the SEC basketball has been dominant during this tournament. I was concerned from a standpoint when you looked at the teams and the conferences that dominated in the regular season and got the most most teams, most bids, NCAA tournament bids recently. The conferences had struggled during the tournament. That has not been the case in this tournament. Uh, you get the record. They get a record number of teams in the tournament. They get a record number of teams in the Sweet 16. So the SEC is the big winner of the week. It's very hard pressed. It's very hard pressed to find on a winner, somebody winning the week. I almost went with Bronny James. I really did. If y'all don't believe me, actually, it was the pickings were slim, but we will go with the SEC basketball conference. Some real thoughts before I let you go. So Shaduer Sanders been a highly polarizing figure as we approach the draft. The draft is less than a month away. Matter of fact, it'll be a month from Thursday. Um, so I was just thinking about everything that's been said about Shadur Sanders, good, bad, and indifferent. When you look at let's put aside that he's Deion Sanders' son. Let's put that aside for a second. No, it's almost impossible, but just just bear with me. Bear with me here. Okay, Boone Jackson State, 50 college starts, sacked 90 times in 2 years, 64 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 71% completion percentage, can throw from the pocket, which is still the most important skill that a quarterback can have. Can throw from the pocket, like can be dominant from the pocket. If I gave you and it's tough as nails, he got sacked 90 times in 2 years. So he clearly does not need a dominant offensive line to produce. Finished eighth in the Heisman this year. Um, Works out, has worked with Tom Brady. Tom Brady has spoke highly of him, and Tom Brady does not just give away compliments. He just doesn't. Tom Brady is not one of these guys as every quarterback is a great quarterback. You have to earn his respect. So if you run that resume and he wasn't Deion Sanders' son, would we even be questioning the fact that he would be either the the first or second quarterback taken? Would there even be any question? Now, he's not going past five. Okay, these teams are desperate for quarterbacks. This is not a somebody's going to reach and take. Somebody's going to take him. Like he's not like I don't care about these quarterback grades, these first round grades, and have him late first round. No, I don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to that at all. He's not going past 5. He may not go past 4. He's going to be a top 5 pick. But I'm just looking at his skills, his experience, what he can do. Um, I'm not saying he's going to be like there's no generational talents in this draft, but I would sign it. I think that this guy will be a more than productive player in the NFL. I don't like again, there are not a lot of great situations. We understand that. I don't. The Giants is if he goes to the Giants, then we'll see. Again, we understand there are not a lot of great situations, but if the situation is even somewhat stable, I don't see him fall. Like I don't see this guy being a guy who's out the league in 2 or 3 years. I think I think he will be a solid NFL quarterback. And again, remember he's played under the pressure of being Deion Sanders' son. There's a lot of sons that would melt under that pressure. Period. He seems to embrace it. So I want you to keep that in mind when you hear people talking about Shaduer Sanders. Forget about forget about the fact that he's Deion Sanders' son. Look at the body of work. Look at how he played at a place that had that again they had 2 years where the offensive line was in 23 was horrible. 24 was average at best. And again, I understand he had Travis Hunter, but that Colorado program was at the beginning of the Deion Sanders tenure. It will only get better. The program is only going up. Um, so it's not like he had all these All Americans around him. It's not like a situation where again he possesses the most important thing you can for a quarterback. He's accurate and he can throw from the pocket. So I would be focused more on what Shador Sanders can do than what he can't. He lacks athleticism. He doesn't have great size. Focus on what he can do more so than the other way around. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your week. So long.